Hi, I'm not gonna bore you to death here and we'll get right to the heart of thing. This is the second part of our best PC 2D platformers of 1990s video and it covers spots 41 to 1 on the list. So let's jump right in. Jill of the Jungle Jill Goes Underground is the second and arguably the best entry in the trilogy, and also one that answers age-old question. Does Jill look better in green or red? And the answer is simple, red. It is not set in the jungle anymore and Jill now scours the Montezuma's castle and its countless underground chambers. Gameplay-wise, not much has changed, she can still run, jump, climb and fight various different creatures and also transform into others for a mandatory degree of environmental puzzling. The selection of enemies from the original is complemented by a bunch of new ones and they are much smarter and aggressive than ever before. It's always fun to see Jill swoop around her games as she's a fundamental part of PC's platforming history. Lolly is a doll that was animated as in brought to life by a lightning strike. You know, like Frankenstein's monster. Only less cute, no green skin, still stats, nothing. And she craves sweets. Any and all kinds of sweets, and at all times. You know, like a true vegetarian zombie would. So she decides to head off to the promised land, one where the rivers are made of lemonade, the snow is chocolate and the jelly beans are flowers. You know, the yum yum land. The road to freedom is not an easy one though, as there are a whole manner of different enemies, monsters and hazards trying to stop Lolly on her path. She is not going to abandon her newly granted life and freedom though, and she bravely fights her way through an 8 level strong tale. Raised in the harsh streets of Seattle, Kai Blackthorne grew up to be a tough, relentless mountain of muscles. There are no weights he cannot lift and no amount of protein powder he cannot munch on. So he feels like he's finally ready to come back to his planet Tool to defeat the evil Sarlacc who took it over 20 years prior. Blackthorne is an action-packed cinematic platformer similar in its presentation, viewpoint and gameplay to an all-time Delphin Software's hit, Flashback, only much less deep in the storyline and considerably more focused on explosive action and gunplay. While the second Brick Dangerous is perhaps not as good and revolutionary as the first was, at least in my eyes, it's still a damn good title and an excellent time to be had, if you're someone who likes demanding, memorization-based platformers that will not treat you like a kid, or if you enjoy being reminded by a game why you suck so much, either will do. So it will punish you time after time after time, and it will pull no punches at all. The aliens want to take over the world, which in today's reality seems like a joke cause it's a hot mess. And it's up to Rick Dangerous, to take them on in Hyde Park in London, ice caverns somewhere, forest in another somewhere, and atomic mines in the third somewhere, and then eventually in the final unlockable stage to prevent them from succeeding. When I began working on the list for these two videos, although back then it was still supposed to be only one, I imagined it being 50 titles strong tops. When I got to here though, so 37th spot, and in the second video, I know already that it will have exactly 82 games. It seems that I've misjudged DOS for having far fewer good platformers than it really did. And that's on me. Elf is one of those games that were added to the list last as it somehow escaped my memory. It's a flip-screen action platformer in which you're playing as Cornelius the Elf, you have to save your beloved Eliza that's been kidnapped by an evil creature known only as Nicrilius the Not Very Nice. Cool name, right? It may not have the wow factor anymore, but when I saw the abuse first, the game, not the act of aimless violence and cruelty, I was instantly hooked. Never before have I seen any game mixing keyboard and mouse controls in an action-centric platformer so well and in such an ergonomic way. I mean, I didn't have to learn the controls or get used to them at all, I just sat at the game and instantly knew how to control it. It was a marvel. You play as a cyborg equipped with various weapons, or well, capable of equipping them as you need to get to them first, and you have to escape the prison complex that's been a subject to an experiment gone wrong, and all the guards and inmates transformed into monsters. All but you. It would be a cool twist if you'd be spared cause you were a monster all along. I feel that just Jackrabbit 2 was a better game than the first. Sure, it came a bit late for a 2D platformer on PC, but it improved upon everything that the original offered, and in all manner of ways. all the while retaining the same gameplay formula of running and gunning at incredible speeds. It introduced a high resolution to the mix, split-screen multiplayer, where even up to 4 people could play it at once, and 5 different game modes. Cooperative, which was my fave as it was the campaign, Battle, so a deathmatch, Race, in which you were racing laps around levels, Capture the Flag, which is self-explanatory, and Treasure Hunt, in which whomever collects 100 diamonds first, wins. It was a blast. Cool Spot is another of those product placement games that there were so many of in the 1990s, but it's also actually a pretty fun title in its own right. You play as the titular Cool Spot and North American mascot for the 7-Up brand, and you have to collect certain number of spots in each level to free your brethren Uncool Spots from their captivity and in turn turn them into cool spots too. The levels are filled with all manner of different, thematically fitting to the level's design creatures, and you have to defeat them with your bubble projectiles. Cool Spot may not be the best platformer out there, but it's very solid in terms of all gameplay, graphics and sounds, and you're not gonna get bored playing it. Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure was one of the first games adapted to the new version of Windows 95 to show off its multimedia capabilities and power of DirectX libraries. As a first effort, it was pretty great. But given the relatively early iteration of these slips and hardware available at the time, the dynamic window scaling, which was its biggest feature, was not viable for everyday use yet. So either play it in a tiny window or in full screen. The game is a modern follow-up to the Atari's classic Pitfall, and sees you playing as Pitfall Harry Jr., battling through Mayan jungle, mine and waterfall areas among others, seeking your disappeared father, Pitfall Harry. If it was I, and not you, deciding on the order of games in this video, Fear of the Furries would have held the top spot. It's by far my most favorite 2D action-adventure platformer with puzzle elements. It gives you control of 4 unique fairies, each with their own special abilities. So red can chew through floors and walls, yellow shoots fireballs and looks mean, blue can dive and shoot bubbles underwater, no doubt made out of farts, and green has a line with a grappling hook on which it can swing and pull objects with. And they have to traverse through 9 large worlds, split into smaller stages to find and defeat the villain of the game, the so-called The Wicked One, who corrupted their fellow fairies, turning them into his mindless drones. Disney's Hercules is based on the animated cartoon movie. You play as the titular hero and the strongest man in the world, and you must prove yourself worthy of being admitted to the Mount Olympus to sit among gods. To do so, you must prove your strength and courage. So you'll be performing different feats and overcoming numerous obstacles, which Hades will go out of his way to make considerably more demanding than they would have been otherwise. While some stages are not stricter platforming, majority of the gameplay is, hence its placement on the list. So, you'll be running around the stages using different attacks and your enchanted sword to defeat countless enemies and not so countless bosses. Another World, aka Out of This World, is this sci-fi cinematic action-adventure platformer, and a game that's, at least in my humble opinion, an experience everyone should go through at least once. Granted, I am much worse at gaming today than I was in the 90s, so I'm convinced I wouldn't be able to complete it. Another World was best known for its captivating plot, brilliant balance between action-packed gameplay and puzzling, lifelike rotoscoped animations and complete lack of any kind of interface, making it feel like an interactive animated movie. Oh, and the difficulty. Yeah, it was known for that too. For separating noobs from Omega gamers, and I know that, cause I was definitely not in the Omega camp. While Batman is not entirely a platformer, 2 out of its 5 stages are, so you could argue that majority of it is. So, yeah, we're gonna talk about it. It is based on the best Batman movie ever made, 1989's Tim Burton's original with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. And yes, I saw all the others, and yes, I still consider it the best. I played this Batman the most on C64, where it was a fantastic and genre-defining title. On PC though, while arguably being a better game because of the power difference between the two systems, it was just not doing it for me anymore. It was too 8-bit in its design, and I very much so preferred newer and more advanced quote-unquote modern platformers than it. Mid-1990s saw a lot of Disney's IPs released as platformers, and they were pretty much all great. The Lion King was no different. It took all of your clothes off, removed your shoes and any jewelry, and placed you in 4 pose of a baby Simba. Initially, as in time, as the game progressed, you eventually moved into controlling him as a grown-up. The game loosely follows the events of the movie, although it's not as close as some other games from Disney were. Collecting bugs in some levels allows you to enter bonus stages in which you play either as Timon or Pumbaa. While Prehistorik 2 is better than the original in nearly all aspects imaginable, I always felt that it was a very simplistic, very 8-bit feeling game in its design, and because of that, I never really liked it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just when I moved to modern and powerful systems, I craved modern and flashy experiences. That's me though, and you may not feel like it. So in Prehistorik 2, you run around as this caveman dude that's on a mission to educate the world and all creatures living on it that the human species are the top dogs, and you do so one club hit to the head at a time. And you do a pretty good job at that, knocking them out left and right and collecting spores in the form of fruit and many other items for points. Prince of Persia 2, The Shadow and the Flame starts directly after the original, which we'll talk about much later in the video, so I'll explain this one pretending that you don't know of the other. So after defeating the evil Grand Vizier Jafar, you are ready to take Princess's hand into marriage and become the new Sultan of Persia. You care very little for the money and monarchy theatrics, but the girl is the real deal. As you approach the palace, however, you are magically turned into a beggar, and appearing seemingly out of nowhere doppelganger of yours orders guards to throw you out despite your protests. And as it turns out, it was Jafar again. So, once again, and this time hopefully once and for all, you'll have to defeat Jafar, recover your looks and save your beloved. By now, you may be like, boy, how many Commander Keen games have we covered already? 5, 7, 82? Isn't it enough yet? And the answer clearly is 4 with this one, and no, it's not enough as there are 2 more coming later. Aliens Ate My Babysitter is the 6th chronologically game in the series, and this time it's not about Vorticons at all. Well, it's still about aliens, just not them. So, Molly, Keen's babysitter, has been kidnapped by the Blooks from the planet Frivolous Exax with an intention of being made into a tasty dish. Molly over roast potatoes, sunk in gravy with peas and a touch of cumin. Or maybe even Molly soup with wild mushrooms and cream. The possibilities are endless, and also what Keen cannot allow to happen, so he sets out to save her. Traditionally for the shareware games, Alien Carnage has a stupid story. It's so stupid in fact that it could have been made into a juicy and terrible, super fun to watch B-movie. You know, like those killer tomatoes from space and other similar junk that you cannot just not love. So, aliens have invaded Earth. But of course they have. And they've decided that the best way to conquer the planet is not to kill everyone on it in cold blood, but to turn them into green zombies. So you'll be killing zombies, rescuing hostages, using many different weapons with upgradable ammo, collecting coins and, well, and saving the world. You know, how you do. Soccer Kid was originally an Amiga game before being ported to PC. That said, it's odd that it's called Soccer Kid and not Football Kid, as Amiga was considerably much more popular and sold much better in Europe than in the US. On the other hand, Football Kid or Football Lad just doesn't sound as good, so maybe that was the reasoning behind it. Still, it's a very fun action platformer in which you're controlling a young kid who has to travel the world to recover parts of the World Cup Cup that was broken into pieces and scattered around the planet by the aliens who tried to steal it. The ball is used as a weapon, as means to collect pickups and also for traversal, and the mechanics behind its use is unlike anything you've seen. If you didn't think that Zool was enough already, Rayman Graphics came back with Zool 2, which also includes Zeus, Zool's girlfriend, and also a ninja from Nth Dimension, and Zune, his intergalactic wonder dog. Yeah, I do think it's a bit much, but the game itself is pretty fun. There are 6 large levels split into 16 smaller stages, and our heroes can now also scale walls and spin attack. This time, however, you are not in the Predator movie-like scenario, but have to save your homeworld dimension Nth from the Cruel, who set out his forces there to rid it of any imagination. Silly? Perhaps? Pointless? Yeah, that too. But it plays pretty well, so that's what's important. Turrican to the Final Fight was 1991's Amiga original. The port came in 1995, so a bit late, but fortunately its gameplay is so fantastic that even after a few years it remained a gem among other offerings on the platform. In layman's terms, Turrican 2 is Metroidvania kind of a game, so an always scrolling shooting run and gunner with tons upon tons of different weapons, sci-fi setting, countless enemies, and more action than one person should ever be asked to handle. It's super fun. Story-wise, an evil mega robot called the Machine attacked your ship, killing everyone on it but you. So you jump into experimental Turrican power armor and head off after the robot seeking revenge. I bet that you're tired of hearing me say Commander Keen or Disney, and yet I'm back to say it once more. So brace yourself as I will try to use both in one sentence somehow. Well... Oh, I know. Disney's Jungle Book is not Commander Keen game. Well done me, I've once again pulled it off. The Jungle Book is naturally based on the original animated movie in which you control Mowgli, so the boy who was raised by wild animals in the heart of the jungle. And he can run, jump, swing on vines, climb and fight with a variety of aggressive animals using thrown weapons. All to find the sole human village on the outskirts of the jungle to rejoin his own species. Magic Pockets is an excellent example of what I like to call stupid story tons of fun kind of a game. So you are this kid who has magical trousers with bottomless pockets, and he keeps everything in it. His toys, his sweet 1960s Chevrolet Camaro, and one-to-one sized copy of Empire State's building. Everything. And on one of those cold winter days, creatures living in his pockets, because of course there are those there as well, steal his toys. So now he has to embark on a 4-world-long quest to recover them. Magic Pockets' levels are always scrolling and chock full of enemies. Enemies which you can defeat using objects thrown out of your pocket. The gimmick here is that you can charge up the object in your pocket, making it bigger and harder hitting, and that they change the look and properties in each of the worlds. Just Jackrabbit? More like Sonic with guns. And in many ways it was Sonic with guns, because Jess was faster, crazier and more action-packed than Sonic ever could hoped of being. Was it better than it though? I suppose the opinions may differ here, but if I was to look at it objectively and take off my rose-tinted nostalgia glasses, I would have to say no, it wasn't. It is excellent and a lot of fun, but it's not as polished. That however was fixed with the second game, which funny enough we spoke about already in the previous video. MobyGames users, it seems, had more love for the first one though. Jess travels around different planets, saving them from evil Devon Shell and his forces, seeking information about Princess Eva Earlong's location to eventually rescue her too. I'm going to tell you a secret, I never liked gods. I played it first on the Amiga, then on PC, and even saw it on Sega Genesis at some point too. And I really like neither of them. Which should mean nothing really, as it's generally speaking a great game. The 4 evil guardians have invaded the citadel of gods, leaving them in a pickle. I mean, they could just remove the invaders, but it's not befitting the deities to mix with mortals. So they seek a hero to get rid of the guardians in exchange for immortality and an equal seat among them. And you, playing as extremely slow-walking and projectile-tossing Hercules, decide to answer the call, one snail slow tiptoe at a time. If you are a decent gamer, which sadly I only ever am occasionally these days, once every full moon if you will, then The Heart of Darkness is a fantastic game. It was created by Eric Chackey, known for his earlier genre-defining title, Another World. And same as that game, Heart of Darkness 2 is an unforgivingly difficult, beautifully animated and playing cinematic platformer. Despite the challenge that it poses to Sunday gamers, it is easily one of the most beautifully looking platformers ever made. It tells the story of a kid named Andy attempting to rescue his dog Whiskey from the creatures of darkness who took him right into the heart of Darklands. While DOS's Castlevania port is not technically speaking a broken game, it is pretty bad and definitely not worth the 15th spot, at least in my eyes. That's my opinion though, and you may elect to consider it stupid. And I bet most of you will, given its spot in MobyGames users' rankings. Still, let me tell you why a game that's such high on the list actually sucks. While it looks like a worthy EGA version of the original, it only does so until it starts moving. The scrolling is atrocious, jerkier than in any other game in this video. The sounds and music share the same terribly sounding PC speaker single channel and use maybe 3 or 4 samples at most, repeating for most actions. The latency between when you press something and when it actually happens is actually visible with a naked eye. Oh, and the kicker to it all is that it doesn't even contain all the levels found in NES original. So yeah, I begin to question validity of Moby user scores. Where Castlevania failed, Fire and Ice succeeded. It looks amazing, perhaps not as good as it did on the Amiga, where it had a lot of parallaxing and even some juicy real-time reflections. But the sprites are big, the animations are buttersmooth, and it's just a pleasure to experience it in motion. And the fact that it plays great, and that the sounds and music are sweet too, make Fire and Ice look like a title that had a lot of craft and love go into it. You play a cool coyote as opposed to lame dog or a foxy fox, and you have to assemble a key from the pieces that are carried by the enemies in each stage of this multi-level romp, all to unlock the exit and progress further. Earthworm Jim on PC is one of those rare games that were actually better on it than on the consoles it originally released on. While nothing was added content-wise, the graphics were a bit more polished, with nicer looking sprites and a tad higher resolution to boot. It's also one of the weirdest games ever, as you're controlling an anthropomorphic worm that somehow got his hands on a suit that actually granted him hands and legs. I know, sounds ridiculous, but nowhere nearly as ridiculous as some of the things that you'll do in the game. Like using your worm body as a whip-like weapon, as a grapple hook, or to spin like a rotor to hover for a short while. It's just great. Most of all, however, it's a beautiful and hilariously funny run and gunner and easily one of the best platformers on PC. Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Sword of Chaos, is the second and last game which addition to this list I question. Because while it may have been a much better title than the Castlevania on DOS and even looks decent on still screenshots, it also failed to be a good port. The scrolling is choppy, the framerate is anything but smooth, and the collision detection makes it feel like a failed shooter, and not a game about ninja at all, as some enemies can actually hit you from afar. Not from a screen length, mind you, but at least a good dozen or so of pixels. It doesn't happen often perhaps, but when it does, it really hurts. Oh, and the controls are rather disappointing too, having an obvious latency delay. The only good thing about Ninja Gaiden 2 being so high on the list is that the remaining 11 titles are all fantastic. If it was up to me, Superfrog would have easily gotten the second spot. But since it's not, I'm happy that it's at least so high on the list anyway. It's an Amiga original and an excellent proof that PCs, whomever their maker was, were capable of offering equally as good platformers as the consoles did. Superfrog is divided into 6 uniquely themed worlds of a few levels each, and provide for countless hours of all-way platforming fun, collecting coins, killing buddies, and most of all, seeking hidden caches of treasures, passageways and secrets. It's incredible. It also tells a story of a prince turned into a frog, gaining his super magical powers after drinking orange Lucozade, British energy drink, which I assure you, does actually grant you powers, and having to find an evil witch and defeat her to regain your true form and save your beloved princess. Talking about the games I'd like to see placed differently, I would have given Rayman a third spot right after Fury of the Furries and Superfrog. It was originally aimed at CD-ROM add-on for the SNES, but since that never came to be, it was released as Atari Jaguar Original, with ports to other systems following soon after. Rayman is a joy to witness in motion. All the backgrounds are just beautiful, the character and enemy sprites are large and incredibly animated, and Rayman with his disconnected limbs is just super fun to play as. Story-wise, Mr. Dark, which is perhaps not as evil-sounding as Mr. Bad, but considerably more nefarious, has kidnapped all the Toons. Toons being Rayman's friends and also source of light in his entire world. So now our hero has to wind up his fists in preparation for a series of punches that he will deliver to Mr. Dark and his countless goons. Commander Keen 5, the Armageddon machine, is the most epic titled game in this entire video. I mean, Armageddon. You don't know what to expect. You've no idea what could happen, it's scary. Well, fortunately, you have me here to fill in the gaps. So 80-year-old hero Billy Blaze, aka Commander Keen, has learned about Shikadi's aliens' plans to destroy the galaxy, and to stop them, he must board their mothership, defeat the powerful machines protecting the elevator leading to Alien's ship's core, and destroy it. As per usual, you have your ray gun and a pogo stick at hand, you need to defeat hundreds of enemies, collect even more pickups, and involve yourself in a mandatory environmental puzzling, all to save the universe. I mean, galaxy. Potato tomato. While SNES owners may try to claim otherwise, never having to receive this gem of a game, Disney's Aladdin by Virgin Games is the best Aladdin game ever made. Armed with a sword and near limitless assortment of spoiled apples, Aladdin must traverse through famous locations known from the animated movie to defeat the evil Grand Vizier Jafar. It's worth pointing out that the animations for the game were created in cooperation with Walt Disney Feature Animations, so you know, their quality is unquestionable. I mean, just look at how it runs and sounds. Yes, sounds. The music in this one is such an earworm. Man, what a game. So yeah, Disney's Aladdin is cool, make sure to play it. While I consider Fury of the Furries to be a much better puzzle platformer than the Lost Vikings, most of you thought otherwise, and hence why they're in the positions that they are on the list. It doesn't change the fact that it's a gem of a game in which you're playing as 3 displaced in time Vikings. Eric the Swift, Olaf the Stout and Balog the Fierce have to escape the captivity from the alien known as the Dominator, who is collecting different species to display in his gallery. You know, his interdimensional time-displaced zoo, if you will. Each of the 3 has different abilities and must combine them all to solve the puzzles and find their way back home to their loving wives. Yup, that's in the lore. Commander Keen 4 Secret of the Oracle is the first game in the second series, Goodbye Galaxy, and your favorite Commander Keen game out of them all. Well, probably not really, as everyone's different, but according to MobyGames, it is. We have proven more than once today that the scores don't always correspond to the title's quality, or that the scores somehow bleed through from other platforms to DOS. Whatever is the reason behind it all, it's irrelevant, and the important thing is that Keen 4 is great. The galaxy is under a threat from an alien race known as Shikadi, and Keen must consult the Oracle on how to deal with them. As it turns out, Shikadi captured 8 council members necessary to activate the Oracle, because yes, it's obviously an AI, and now he must save them to seek its advice. Remember when I dared saying that Sonic is better than just Jackrabbit? Turns out you agree, because Sonic CD was placed much higher on the MobyGames S2D platformers list of PC games. This particular entry in the Sonic series is actually rather well thought out and has some interesting mechanics. Namely, you get to travel to the past and future version of the levels, and depending on your performance in the past versions of the stages, the future ones will be either easier or more challenging, throwing different number of enemies and hazards at our blue hedgehog hero. Dr. Eggman, aka Robotnik, seems to be manipulating the fabric of time and has created Sonic's evil alter ego, Metal Sonic, as in listening to the metal music and also made out of metal too. And that bad Sonic kidnapped Amy, our real Sonic's self-proclaimed girlfriend. And this act of war, as you can pretty much guess, cannot stand. MegaMan X was made to inject some fresh blood into stale original Mega Man action platforming formula, and for the most part, the effort was successful and the game was a hit not only on its original SNES, but also a couple of years later on PC. Sure, those versions may have not brought any significant changes, but you don't fix what's working, you take it as it is and enjoy it for what it is too. The 16/32-bit coat of paint looks fantastic, and the animations are super smooth, befitting the year that the game released in. Mega Man itself has some new and interesting powers, like a dash or a climbing to name a few, and overall it's a blast to play. A mega blast to play. Brace yourselves, I'm gonna do a little of fourth wall breaking, and destroy the illusion of me talking to a mic in a dark quiet room and you being passive viewers only. Cause you're not, and one of you recently asked me about the claw when the first part of the video released. And here it is. The Claw. Pretty awesome name, not necessary for the platformer, but it is. Claw is a beautiful side-scrolling platformer in which you play as a pirate cat that embarks on a perilous quest to find the mystical amulet of 9 lives, to add the 9 to his already 9 and make himself the first ever 18 lives cat. Supposedly. Still, the adventure will take him through many enemies-filled lands, in which he'll need to swashbuckle his way through, using his pirate sword, pistol, dynamite bombs and even super special claw attack. Prince of Persia is arguably the very first ever cinematic platformer, and equally as arguably the second ever game to use rotoscoped animations, first being Karateka, Prince of Persia's creator's first game. While Sultan of Persia is fighting a war abroad, Persia is ruled by an evil Grand Vizier Jafar. Not gonna lie, don't know what Grand Vizier is, and I'm too ignorant to learn, but I imagine a huge dude with an excellent eyesight. That said, he took over Persia, and now, to solidify and legitimize his rule, he aims to marry Sultan's daughter. And that is a major problem, and not only because of all I just mentioned, but also because the character you play as loves her too. So now you have 60 minutes to escape the dungeon Jafar locked you in, beat up his goons, and him too, and not only save the princess, but also let her make you a real man. Yup, not a game for kids. Also a lie. Have you noticed how many of the games on the list in these two videos have been Amiga originals that were later on released on PC? Yeah, a lot. And our first spot is 2. And I am sure that you knew what game it was going to be, given that we've not spoke about it so far, and it's such an important title. It's Flashback, The Quest for Identity. So the first game ever, entirely based on the premise of the main hero seeking appropriate pronoun to be described by. No, that's another lie. I should really stop lying, as you may begin to think that I lie all the time. So, Flashback is probably the most famous and beloved cinematic platformer ever made. It received ports to more systems than any other, and they were all great. It is set in the year 2142, and you play as Conrad B. Hart, who after narrowly escaping hostile aliens crash lands on an unknown planet, and when he wakes up, he has no recollection of who he is, and where he's supposed to go. And your quest is not only to survive, but also to recover your identity. So, what do you think, guys? How did the MobyGames users did? Do you agree with their choices? I know that I would have definitely shaved a few of the games and rearranged the rest, but hey, that's me, and I'm known to make mistakes and bad choices. How about you let me know your top 10, or better yet top 3, and we'll see how they stack up against my top 3 picks. It could be fun. Anyway, if you liked the video, hit those like, share and subscribe buttons below, and if you feel generous, that bell icon would help too, as it will let you know whenever I release something new. For me, this is all, so take care of yourself and I'll talk to you soon.